Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and we have several really good questions from inside the Red Raider subscribers, so I'm going to dive right into them. First one comes from Tech Freak, who asked about Tech's tortilla throwing tradition. He says, does Tech throwing tortillas to start the game with the refs pissed off at the team and at Texas Tech? He says he's trying to figure out why they're always on the other side of the refs. He likes the tradition, but he's starting to wonder. He wants to know if I'm pro or negative tortilla throwing. Well, I'm pro just because it's fun. I like fun traditions. People, opposing teams talk about it all the time when they're coming. Tortilla is good. Other objects, bad. Just like anything else, I guess tortilla throwing can be abused. I don't think, first off, like I said, I'm for the tortilla throwing. It's fun. It's what it's supposed to be. It's fun. And so that's good. Now, in terms of the refs being pissed off, I don't think so. Maybe from ref to ref it's different. I don't know. That would seem very petty. And these refs are people, and they're capable of being petty, that's for sure. And then going to your other part where you're saying it seems like the refs are always against Texas Tech. Well, I think that's something like the way you look at it. So when you get a call go your way, which, believe it or not, does happen for Texas Tech, it doesn't stick with you. It's just like all my interviews with like former great like professional Hall of Famers and stuff like that, great players, they seem to remember, and think about it in your own like Uncle Rico days when you play high school or college or whatever level you play. You remember the times you didn't make the plays, the mistakes, the games you lost, even if you've won championships and stuff and done like heroic things and you were like an all district or all conference player or whatever. If you're an all-star, you still remember those plays you didn't make. It's just human nature. So if you look at that in terms of with the refs, we remember the calls that went against the teams we cover or root for or whatever, a lot more than we remember the calls that don't go for you. It does appear that, especially with Tech football, it's snake bit. Perhaps Tech has gotten the short end of the stick more times than not, but I do think it's something to just you remember the bad calls. And this last week was an extreme example because you could ask Mighty Joe on the board or whatever, but I said he pointed out these refs, like specifically this crew that I don't like, and that head referee. And when he said, and we have a nickname for him and all this stuff, and he said, "Oh, look who it is!" And I said, in the press box, I literally said, pretty in a loud voice, "Oh no!" Just because he's incompetent, not because I think he has anything against Texas Tech. And I didn't think it'd play out to that degree, but it definitely played out. And I don't think that's why Tech lost to Colorado. I'm not saying that. I'm not making excuses, but the refs were incompetent in that game. Excuse me, and it get emotional, and it caught up with Texas Tech. I heard them in some of those no calls and some of those calls, those phantom calls. So it's one of those, like, it felt like against Iowa State, so many things went Tech's way, and it was meant to be, and it was the other way against Colorado. And Colorado kicked their butts up front, so I want to make sure they get credit. From Syntex says, is it Kittley or the talent level? Yeah, I think Kittley, as the offensive coordinator, shoulders blame for those long stretches where Tech's inefficient, unable to move the ball, unable to score. The buck stops with him, and then ultimately McGuire. But to me, there's two problems on offense. One, I think, is serviceable, you could win with, and that's Baron Morton. He's missed a number of throws. Sometimes looks a little nervous in the pocket. Doesn't have very good pocket presence at times. And is kind of erratic with his accuracy. Now, he's made some plays. He's done some good things for the most part. He's taking care of the ball. I think he's a winner. There's definitely something there to him. I think he's a powerful quarterback. But there does appear to be some limitations, or he needs to take a step, in a hurry. But the main problem on offense to me is not Kittley or even Morton. It's the offensive line. And Colorado really exposed that. The offensive line got his butt whipped. But really, I don't even think the offense is the biggest problem. I do think it's the defense. So against Colorado, the defense in the first half played really well. Now the levee broke, and that's going to lead me on my next question from y'all. But Colorado in the second half had their way with Tech's defense, but for the season, the defense has been the problem in a lot of ways. Though, man, the offense does seem to have they play complementary football in a bad way. Like the defense, the levee breaks, and then the offense all of a sudden can't move the ball. So I'm going to say it's a little bit of both. Kittley definitely should not be excused from some of the blame of the offensive problems, struggles at times. But I don't think he's been terrible. I think he's limited by his offensive line and his quarterback. But you can always circle that back around to whoever's ultimately responsible. The offensive coordinator is Kittley. Bobby 09677 says, what needs to be done to get the offensive line significantly better? We'll have the defensive one later. Do they need a couple of portal hits, or are the pieces already on campus and needing to development? Yeah, I think it's both. I think you're probably going to need a stopgap or two again, one more season, because you're going to have some guys who are redshirt freshmen now. Like I've heard people say, well, what is McGuire's recruits going to, on the offensive line? Well, I think there is something to that. You're seeing it on different parts of the field, but not the offensive line really yet. And it takes those guys, the oldest guys of his full cycle at Texas Tech are redshirt freshmen. So and that's young by offensive lineman standards. Now, like Colorado had a walk-on freshman play, and Shedeur Sanders erases some of those mistakes because he's so elusive, and he has great pocket presence. Going back to conversations in the press box, Monty Joe and I were talking about it, and he was just like, man, one of the biggest differences in this game is Shedeur Sanders' pocket presence compared to Baron Morton's. And that's a true story, because both offensive lines struggle at times. Tech's more than Colorado's, but I think some of that is because Shedeur has better pocket presence and is more elusive. But there are some guys coming up that I like, very talented dudes that Tech likes, that recruiting analysts that don't, follow exclusively Texas Tech that they really like. They're developing, so that'll be something. But I do think one tackle and one interior guy would help the cause. And Vinny Scurry should be back if he gets his medical red shirt and all that. So that could help, assuming he's what he was before. I think the coaches consider him the best offensive lineman before he got hurt. So I think it's just like I think in most years it's going to be a little bit of both. Now they may keep stacking offensive lineman recruiting classes that they like, and to where they don't have to go to the portal as much. But some of those guys are going to leave from the portal or greener pastures, even if they have a good year here. So I think it's going to always be you got to do a little bit of both, specifically in our position that's so critical as an offensive line. Here's the defensive question that I was talking about. GB Jack says, why does it seem like a dam break when the defense gives up points? They give up points on 3 or more consecutive drives in 5 games. Yeah, it does, and that's weird. I don't know. That's a really good question because, you look at how Tech played defensively at the beginning against Colorado, and then I think Colorado scored on 5 or 6 straight possessions or something like that. And a couple of those there was a couple of bad penalties that went against Texas Tech, but it does like you said, the dam break. I said the levee breaks. I think that's a good analogy or whatever. That does what it seems like. It's like, oh, here we go, and then the opposing team just scores points in a hurry. I think there's some adjustments being made by opposing offenses. I also think you have a young defense, especially in the secondary. In the secondary and up front in a couple of spots. So I think maybe in terms of not having the experience, that kind of just starts snowballing. Things start piling up, and maybe they don't have that experience to draw upon to kind of rebound. So I definitely think that's part of it because they have some depth. So you wouldn't think those guys get tired. And it's like they're just breaking down or something like that physically. But I do think there might be something to it mentally, when the levee breaks it. Just the lack of experience. But that's my best explanation. It is a thing. I wish I knew the answer to it, but it's a thing and it's a little confusing. But in big wins, you've seen like somebody step up, like Ben Roberts force a errant throw, or more often than not, it's Jacob Rodriguez forcing a fumble. That's a big play that kind of stops that avalanche of the other team just scoring points. Whether it be Cincinnati, Arizona, Iowa State, it was all three of those games. There was some kind of play like that stunted that opposing team offensive avalanche. So that's really what they're relying on at this point. Raider Fan 001 says Tech seems to do well in the first quarter and then stall. Is that they're not making adjustments, opponents are making adjustments, or a combination of both? I think it's perhaps Tech in some of those cases has good game plans going in. The other team adjusts, and then look, Tech does have a winning record, so more times than not they have made enough adjustments. When you look at Iowa State, 2 big drives, 98-yard drive in the second half, that was pivotal. And then the game-winning touchdown drive. So there were some adjustments made there. And then defensively, there's at times I just talked about how the avalanche, but whether it be somebody stepping up, making a big play, or DeRitter being more aggressive, there have been some adjustments. But there is definitely, that's part of the chess match of playing at this level. You're playing against good coaching staffs, and I do think that has been a thing where Tech comes out looking really good, and the other team bounces back. And I think it is concerning that the offense, though, does stall out. You have Taj Brooks. I think maybe you do a couple of things where maybe opposing defenses are playing more of their base defense. They're not being as aggressive, and see if they could stop you without having to send a bunch of guys. And then Taj gets his going, and then you start working play action off of that, and that's worked sometimes, and it's been inefficient at times. Last week against Colorado was selling out to stop Taj like right from the get-go, and that first drive really was, you gave Taj the ball 4 times, you moved the ball some, but you hit the big play and the touchdown off of play action. But then, or was it an RPO? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was that long pass to Josh and Josh Kelly, and it just felt like the rest of that quarter, it just wasn't very efficient. And then at one point, it seemed like you force-fed Taj. You just ran up the middle 14 or 15 times, and Colorado was selling out to stop him, and they just kept stuffing you. So, it was a bit frustrating, and it's hard for me to be critical when I'm like, give the ball to Taj, and then you give it to him consistently. You stick with the run, and it doesn't work out. But there definitely has to be adjustments made, and I know that McGuire does have some say in the direction of play calling, so I don't know exactly how that dynamic worked out against Colorado, but the offense stalling in the second and third quarter of games is a thing. And that's something we've seen consistently. So I hope they're focusing on that during the bye week for sure. All right, Engines 53 says, other than tight end Colt Sparks, does Texas Tech have any other preferred walk-ons in the 2025 class? He knows Bobby Ross, the local running back linebacker, was one of the visitors list. Yeah, they do consider him more of like a walk-on type. It's interesting because with the roster change, going from 85 to 105, being all 105 of those guys could be on scholarship. I had a conversation with a couple people in the program, and it says what are walk-ons? Are there even going to be walk-ons? I think there might be. I think there'll be some guys who are maybe getting a Matador Club deal, but not on full scholarship still. Because you don't, just because there's no scholarship limit, I think the SEC is still going to an 85 scholarship limit, but you could have 20 walk-ons. There's still that 105 cap. So I'm not sure what the Big 12 is doing, if they've actually mandated something like that, but you could have 90 scholarship players, 100 scholarship players, whatever, 105 scholarship players. I don't think they're going to do that, but Bobby Ross is somebody who, if he were to join Texas Tech, would be, I believe, in that kind of walk-on type that that level of recruitment or of recruit coming into the program. So it's interesting. So many things, so many things have changed, but so many things are continuing to change. These roster limits, revenue sharing, how the NIL is going to work, how like Tech's deal, like with the Matador Club, but then also being competitive in terms of paying, players to come, signing contracts and stuff like that. So, like, there was a question posed to me about how Tech's NIL works. And I have an idea of how it worked the previous cycle, but moving forward with everything changing, that's something I'm definitely going to have to talk with some key people about. And honestly, I don't know how much they want their strategy out there. So even if I do get all that info and it is legitimate for this cycle for a little while, it could not be accurate later on. And then those people don't want that out there in terms of everybody knowing what their strategy is, like other programs and stuff like that. So it's a crazy world we live in, but I've been really enjoyed this season. I know the Tech's been a roller coaster as usual, but 2 more games left to play. Got the open week this week. You go to Oklahoma State, who obviously has had a rough season, but it's there, and then you finish with West Virginia, who always has their chip on their shoulder. You can never take them lightly just because it's just a tough program, like athletic program in general, not just their edgy, tough program, even when they're just mediocre in a particular sport. But and that would be, I believe, the day after Thanksgiving or 2 days after Thanksgiving. I'm not sure if it's that Friday or Saturday. I think it's Saturday. But anyways, it's been a great Big 12 football season. I'm looking forward to the playoffs. All these changes, I don't think it's all bad. It's just a little. It gets confusing. I think people get confused about how everything's working, and there's a lot that goes into it. And I'll do my best to find out exactly and relay it to y'all as accurately as I can moving forward. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.